Hello and welcome back to another episode of Animal Matters. I'm Grant Lingel.
And I'm Glenn Greenwald.
And today we're going to discuss the animal rights movement. What is it? Where did it come from? Where is it going? Because to many it's this very fringe movement, and at least it started that way. A lot of people in the mainstream thought of it as kind of like a radical extremist movement. But that's not how it really is today. It's picking up more traction. It's becoming, it's involving more people. It's getting a bit more credibility in the media, not nearly as much as it deserves. But I'm starting to see movement in the right direction, and I'm starting to see more people taking it seriously, and I'm starting to see things change a little bit for the better, but obviously we have a long way to go.
When I first started focusing on animal rights in my journalism, some of my readers treated it as this radical leap into this whole new area unrelated to the work I had previously been doing on civil liberties, imperialism, and empire, and abuse of power, and secrecy. And eventually, I was able to make the argument, not actually with much difficulty, that it's a natural extension of all of the work that I had been doing, that all of the principles that I had been working to uphold or expose were the same ones in this area. And the one that was most prominent to me was how war works and war propaganda works, because the United States, for example, is a country that has now been at war for 18 straight years. And if you think about why is it that the population of the United States cares relatively little about that, even in presidential elections, it's almost never discussed. Obviously, part of it is because the sacrifice is borne only by a small number of the people who are in the military and their families. But I think a bigger part of it is that the horrors and evils being done in our name are almost always hidden from us.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Out of sight, out of mind. We never see the mangled bodies of the children that our drones and our bombs kill. We keep the violence and atrocities hidden, and therefore the population just can kind of go about their business and not have to think about it. And I think that's been a major reason why the unspeakable evils of factory farming have largely gone unnoticed and are now finally starting to be awakened, because people are no longer able to turn away because the evidence and the video is out there. And so when you connect, the pigs that you see in wallowing in misery and suffering to the way that you felt such empathy and love for the cute little goat or the cute little pig on the YouTube video that got 10 million views, it's impossible not to make that connection. And that's why the agricultural industry is so obsessed with keeping their evils hidden, because they know once they start to surface, our natural human emotions are going to be triggered. And I do think that's been what's been driving the change in the animal rights movement. Traditionally, animal rights activism has been more or less confined to left-wing precincts. So I guess I'm wondering, in part because I don't know the answer, why has that been? And can that change? Is that changing?
I hope it can change. I don't know why it started with the left and why more people on the right, because there's plenty of people on the right that love animals, that have pets. But there's this strong disconnect that we discussed as well in the first episode between domesticated pets and farm animals. So, I mean, there's something that's, something that doesn't just happen on the right or the left.
There's a breakdown of traditional left-right divisions across the Western world. In France, for example, you see this yellow vest movement. Is it a right or is it a left movement? It's both and it's neither. It's people angry about wealth inequality. It's people angry about depressed wages. It's people angry about neoliberalism and international institutions not caring about the common person. These are left and right grievances, and they're neither. You see it with Brexit, you see it with the election of Trump, you see it with, even interestingly, the Occupy Wall Street movement and the Tea Party movement, protest movements in the US, which are thought about as being ideologically opposite, actually had a huge amount in common when they began. They both began at least in part, in anger over the bailout, the Wall Street bailout. Why did you bail out Wall Street titans who caused the economic collapse and led us all suffering? So I think there's a breakdown in general where this attempt to pit right against left no longer functions the way it used to, because we're starting to realize that we have a lot more in common and have a lot more common enemies than 15 years ago when we were all focused on the left kill babies and the right hate gays. I think that that tactic is starting to erode. But I think a bigger part of it too is, I think part of the hostility for a long time on the right toward animal rights activism was the fact that hunting culture was an important part of, you know, right-wing areas, rural areas. Also, there was this kind of iconic myth around the beauty of family farms.
Right.
You know, farmers with beautiful
and that's why the packaging on all foods has
organic.
That,
because it makes people think it's something noble.
Right.
And now that people are starting to see that, in fact, it looks like, you know, mass slaughter, that there's not beautiful mountainsides populated by cows, but horrific conditions where they're clearly being treated not like living beings but objects. The fiction and fairy tale that allowed people to view it in a positive way is starting to be decimated. And in part, I think that's our challenge, right, is to put the reality, not in a didactic or lecturing way, but put the reality of what this is in front of people and let them decide whether they really are still supportive of it once they see it for what it is. And I think that's why that ideology is breaking down.
Yeah, there's so many fantastic documentaries and great books, and it's too many videos on YouTube to count of what happens inside a factory farm, or the horrors in CAFOs and all of these just places that no one wants to see it. But so many people continue eating it. They continue just shutting it out of their minds and, you know, feeding their habits. Is there, like, I'm trying to figure out what more can be done as animal activists, because the videos exist, the books exist, the articles exist.
We have this instinct to turn away from horrific things, right? We don't want to see dead bodies. We don't want to watch video of maimed and dying people. And so as people who want to get people to change their minds, we need to be aware of the fact that we can't just go around trying to force people to watch things that make them feel horrified and terrible, because that's really dreary, right?
And it can cause the opposite effect. It can push them even further away.
Yeah, for a long time, I think one of the reasons why I didn't become a vegan and I didn't focus on animal rights activism is because it is so depressing and horrible. I wanted to be one of those people who just pretended it didn't exist, because I felt like I couldn't do anything about it. And even to this day, when I do journalism and I talk to animal rights activists and I interview them about some action that they did, when we get to the part where they tell me, oh, we entered the farm and saw, I start bracing myself and wanting to hang up, because I don't want to hear about the animals and the conditions in which they're suffering, because I have that instinct, again, to close my eyes and turn away. So I think what this discussion reveals more than anything else is the principal challenge of finding the right balance between having people see the realities of the agricultural industry and the unspeakable horrors it entails, without driving them away with dreary and difficult material, because at the same time it's necessary to attract people with the beauty and the compassion and the empathy that animals foster, which ultimately is the key, the animating emotion that drives the entire movement. And part of what we're trying to do is to find a way to create a new discourse, so that it's not just hardcore, lifelong animal rights activists who are thinking about these issues, but also people who love animals and who feel empathy and who believe in the principles underlying this movement as well, and think about how to encourage them and create ways for them to contribute also. And that's part of what we're hoping to explore here. And I think this discussion illustrates the challenges, but also the opportunities for this movement. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you the next time.